Welcome to each and every one of you. And I want to give a special warm welcome to our newest member who is Zooming in from Lebanon. So let's give her a round of applause. We're thrilled that you are with us. You will eventually catch up on all of these hand movements. What do these mean? A beautiful way for us to be connected within the virtual space of our Zoom classroom. And again, welcome. We are just so thrilled that you are here with us. Our topic for today's weekly training roundtable, hashtag VibeUpEmotional. Today's topic is an extension of last week's training, which was hashtag VibeUpPhysical. Just a brief reminder and summary of what was covered during last week's training roundtable. And as always, also a reminder that your weekly training roundtable recordings are available for you in your online learning center to return to at any time, which I highly recommend that you do. But again, a brief summary from last week's training on VibeUpPhysical. First of all, we discussed emotional aftershock. Emotional aftershock, which according to WebMD, emotional aftershocks are common and normal reactions to a traumatic event that changes your world. They can include intense or unpredictable feelings, physical symptoms, trouble relating to others. They can appear immediately or after some time. As part of last week's training, we discussed how an untrained, highly sensitive will react to emotional aftershock, specifically defaulting to the highly sensitive coping mechanisms of pushing, hiding, combo plattering. I'm going to ask the team to bring the handout of the coping cycle to the screen so that we can all once again connect in to the highly sensitive coping cycle, starting with being triggered, which sends us into anxiety, fear, lack of safety, hitting those coping mechanisms, moving into collapsing, beating up on self, shame, soothing. And soothing is where I would like to focus for us together today as part of VibeUpEmotional. But before we do that, I want to acknowledge from last week's training roundtable that what do we do as a Business Miracles community of trained, highly sensitive entrepreneurs and leaders, rather than shifting into or reacting into the coping cycle consistently. First, we bow to each other for being here together in this Business Miracles community, where we are committed to creating rather than only coping. So take a minute, just bow to the member to your right, and take a moment and just bow to the member to your left. It is a big deal that we are here. Next, for those of us who are committed to being trained highly sensitives, we use triggers as moments of being touched, reminded, awakened to do it differently. And then we use our strengths, such as intuition, to be ahead of the curve, and our ability to be deeply spiritual to access miracles. And I'm going to invite you to write that down. What do we do in the face of emotional aftershock as highly sensitives who are trained, who are empowered as highly sensitive entrepreneurs and leaders? We use our strengths, such as intuition, to be ahead of the curve, and our ability to be deeply spiritual to access miracles. We do that by using tools such as the order form to the universe, scripting, auto writing, and finally, we make intentional use of the tension. One of the ways that we can do that is by intentionally using physical activity to hashtag VibeUp, as we discussed on last week's training, including using the 5 steps that I shared with you during last week's training roundtable. Again, all available for you to return to, accessing the recording in your online learning center. For this week's training, another way that we respond as highly sensitives who are committed to empowerment, who are committed to being trained. We nurture versus soothe when it comes to our emotional needs. So again, bring your eyes back to the screen and to the coping cycle. Soothing, as part of the coping cycle, is used to bring oneself out of collapsing, beating up on self, mired in shame. From soothing, we eventually access recovery and rebound until once again we're triggered and back around the coping cycle we go. For today's topic, hashtag VibeUpEmotional, we're looking at that soothing and we're looking at intentionally shifting from soothing to nurturing. Thank you to the team for the screen share. Let's start with definitions. When we are looking at nurture versus soothe, when it comes to our emotional needs, let's understand what we're talking about. The official definition of soothe is, one, it's a verb that means to tranquilize or calm a person or their emotions. It can also mean to relieve, comfort, or refresh. Soothe can be used to mitigate or allay pain, sorrow, or doubt. Definition of nurture. Nurture is also a verb, and it means to take care of, to feed, to nourish, to protect, support, encourage, or develop someone or something. The verb nurture can also mean to cherish a hope, a belief, or ambition. When discussing soothe versus nurture, I always want to emphasize I am not saying that soothing is bad. I'm simply highlighting that soothe is more reactive and nurture is more proactive. Let's write that down. When it comes to cultivating hashtag VibeUp as a response to collective aftershock, we want to be proactive. Nurture, particularly, is at the heart of a key teaching and training in the highly sensitive leadership training programs, which is the RAINSit process. And I'm going to ask the team to bring that handout up to the screen. When looking at the RAINSit process, bringing our eyes specifically to nurture, but acknowledging that as part of the RAINSit process, we first recognize, we then allow, then we inquire, nurture, and then surrender. Focusing in again on the nurture aspect of the RAINSit process, reading, now there has been an honest experience of recognizing, allowing, and inquiring. You are poised to make a conscious choice to nurture not only yourself, but what you've learned from this experience so that you are anchoring this learning into a strengthening of resilience for future similar situations, rather than choosing soothing from the coping cycle as a further way to attempt to escape yourself. Focusing specifically on conscious choice and specifically on anchoring this learning into a strengthening of resilience for future similar situations. Thank you to the team for the share. One example for myself from my current 4Q intuitive plan that I'm working with is weekly, as I'm connecting in, both for updating my 4Q weekly plan and creating the focus for my next upcoming 4Q weekly plan, what continues to show up is pleasure read and pleasure TV. So I love this. I love this, and I love that my heart and my intuition keeps showing this to me, specifically regarding pleasure TV. Because how often do we hear and see articles about binging on Netflix and watching TV is destructive? And yet, as we do so many times here in the Business Miracles community, the highly sensitive leadership training programs, we flip the switch. We ask for a miracle. We access a different perception. So my intentional use of pleasure TV is not a reactive soothing as part of coping, but it is a conscious choice. And I'll tell you, it's completely changed the way I choose what I watch. It's completely changed the way I choose when I watch. It's completely changed the way I feel while watching and how I feel after. So how can you take something you've used to soothe yourself in the past? How can you take something you've used to soothe yourself coming out of the coping cycle and flip the switch to be ahead of the curve instead?